right, but we should not also, because we have our own, you can say, bent of mind to deal with this language, and we can only write as Indians. Our method of expression prove to be as distinctive and colorful as the Irish or the American. English has acquired a rare privilege and popularity in India, especially among the elite and the middle classes. It is increasingly being used by writers to give shape to conflicting dilemmas and issues that confront the human psyche. It has definitely become a convenient medium to express the intrinsic talent of the writers. Moreover, English writers use it with enviable ease and gaining mastery of a foreign tongue to articulate the vagaries and vicissitudes of an individual's consciousness in the realm of its own, aptly and expensive, expensiveness and world of the English writer. The seed of Indian writing in English was sown during the period of the British rule in India. Now the seed has blossomed into an evergreen tree, fragrant flowers and ripe fruits. The fruits are being tasted not only by the native people, but they are also being chewed and digested by the foreigners. It happened only after the constant caring, pruning and feeding gardeners like Ravindranath Tagore, Arvind Ghosh, R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao, Mulkraj Anand, to name only a few, looked after the tender plant night and day in modern time, guided by a number of writers who have won award and accolades in all over the world. Indian English literature is an honest enterprise to demonstrate the ever rare gems of Indian writing in English, from being a singular and exceptional, rather gradual native flare up of geniuses. Indian writing has turned out to be a new form of Indian culture and voice in which India conjures regularly. Indian writers, poets, novelists, essayists, and dramatists have been making momentous and considerable contributions to world literature since pre-independence era. The past few years have witnessed a gigantic prospering of English writing in the history of world literature at present time, and wide ranges of themes are dealt within Indian writing in English, while this literature continues to reflect Indian culture, traditions, social values, and even Indian history through the depiction of life in India and Indians living elsewhere. Recent Indian English fiction has been trying to give expression to the Indian experience of the modern predicaments. There are critics and commentators in England and America who appreciate Indian English novel, and as Professor M.K. Naik remarks, that one of the most notable gifts of Indian education to India is prose fiction. For though India was probably a fountainhead of storytelling, the novel as we know today was an importation from the West. India's substantial contribution to world literature is largely due to the profusely creative literary works generated by Indian novelists in their works contemplated and deliberated on multifarious ranges of issues like nationalism, freedom struggle, social realism, individual consciousness, and many more. This literary movement being fortified by the overwhelming output by novelists and distinguished itself as a remarkable force in word fiction. This has been achieved by novelists who sought to prove their inner creative urges in English language, which is indeed an alien tongue for them. It is to the credit of these novelists that they have overcome the hurdles of writing in a foreign language and have been evolved a distinctive style for themselves by mastering the intricacies of assimilating in it the hues and flavors of the Indian subcontinent. We have Raja Rao, you can say, famously argued in 1938 that in the preface of his novel Kanthapura for using English, but English adopted to Indian conditions. And there is there before we can say go on to discuss the you can say various novelists who are writing in English. Before that, we should know what the term novel it means. A novel is a long fictional narrative which describes intimate human experiences. The novel in the modern era usually makes use of a literary prose style. The development of the prose novel at this time was encouraged by uh, innovations in printing and the introduction of cheap paper in the 15th century. A novel is a relatively long work of narrative fiction, normally written in prose form, and which is typically published as a book. The present English word for a long work of prose fiction derives from the Italian word novella for new, news, or short story, or something new itself from the Latin novella, Novella, a singular noun use of the neuter plural of novellus, Novellus, diminutive of novice, Novus, meaning to write something new. Some novelists, including Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville from America, and Radcliffe, John Cooper, Pause, preferred the term romance to describe their novels. As we come across during the Romantic age, when this Gothic novel was written by some writers, then they invented the term for this novel as romance. And according to Margaret Doody, one of the critics, the novel constitutes a continuous and comprehensive history of about 200 years, with its origin in the ancient Greek Roman novel and in the tradition of the Italian Renaissance novella, that is the word, and the ancient romance from form was revived by Romanticism, especially the historical romancers. Walter Scott, we are familiar with the name of Walter Scott. He is one of the important romantic writer, and he invented a new type of novel that was historical novel, and he gave this term the name historical romances of Walter Scott and the Gothic novel. Some, including M.H. Abraham and Walter Scott, have argued that a novel is a fiction narrative which display a realistic depiction of the state of a society, while the romance encompasses any fictitious narrative that emphasizes marvelous or uncommon incidents. Work of fiction that include marvelous or uncommon incidents are also novels, including The Lord of the Ring, To Kill Frankenstein, and romances are works of fiction whose main emphasis is on marvelous of unusual incident and should not be confused with the romance novel, a type of genre fiction that focuses on romantic love. And we have also in the 11th century Japanese text, we had a book, and the name of the writer was Murasaki Shikubu. He wrote Tale of Genji, and in this Japanese text, he has you can say some this has sometimes been described as world's first novel, but there is considerable debate over this. There are certainly long fictional works much earlier. Spread of printed books in China led to the appearance of classical Chinese novels by Ming Dynasty in 1368 to 1644. An early example from Europe was written in Muslim Spain by the Sufi writer Ibn Tufyal, entitled, and the name of the you can say book was He Ibn Yaqdan. Later, development occurred after the invention of the printing press. Miguel de Cervantes, who is the author of Don Quixote, the first part of which was published in 1605, and it is frequently cited as the first significant European novelist of the, you can say, modern era. In Jan Watt, he wrote a book. Name of the book was The Rise of the Novel in 1957, and in that book he suggested that the modern novel was born in the early 18th century. Then we have a chain novel or chain story. It is a type of collaborative fiction written collectively by a group of authors. The novel is passed along from author to author, each adding a new chapter or section to the work, with the rule that each subsequent chapter or section should elaborate and follow the plot line of preceding chapters or sections. So, in, you can say, this type of novel, there are a number of authors, they are involved. The story continues through the participation of the others. No one knows what happened next, because the next author, what is the mood of the next author, nobody can guess. And in this type of novel, except the next person to add the to the story. This method of writing is a shared project and often leads in unexpected directions. Effort is used to stimulate creativity and the exploration of a new idea. And one problem with chain stories is that these stories can become long and complicated due to the number of different people adding new bits and twists with the, can say, course of the story, and that's why plot it can be a bit complicated in this type of stories. So we now we start with the can say what happened to the novel in India, how it was famous, you can say, uh, as a famous genre, it was established. And before, you can say, for that, we have to discuss what was the situation during the pre-independence era, and you can say after, you can say, independence. The novel in India appeared as a popular form of literature during the, or you can say in the world. Let us we talk of, you can say, the whole world where the novel it appeared. It appeared in 18th century in England. It was the result of the gradual democratization in Great Britain. But the novel as a form of literature is new to India. And K.R. Srinivas Iyengar says in this connection, for the novel probably so called, we have to wait till the later half of the 19th century, because up to this time there was no, you can say, popular, you can say, novel written by the Indians. Still, it is said the genre of novel existed in India as a crude form of literature. It is noticeable, it can be noticed that the Western influence on Indian English novel was quite obvious. And it is said that the early Indian English novel is derivative and imitative of English models, has copied their language from the works of English romantics and Victorians. Indian novelists successfully employed European techniques of novel for expressing their ethos and sensibility. What naturally distinguishes Indian English novel from its beginning is its social concern, realism, and its unfailing interest in men. It represents the and cultural perspective of people. So Indian English novelists have given an expression to their hopes and aspiration through novel. In an ardent love for novel in India began with the arrival of the English people. It increased with the spread of English language as the mean of education in the second half of the 19th century. Then the early writers who began writing English novel were the writers whose mother tongue was not English. Still, they wrote novel in English for giving an expression to their spirit of nationalism and to expose their social realities to the international community. And we have some critics like C. Paul Vargas, who says A novelist, it may be said, is in search of a unity in diversity of life and civilization. He, therefore, cannot turn his back on the social realities of his time, but should crave man's image in his art with his social awareness and insight into life. And there are, we can say, many novelists of that period who dealt with social problems for bringing in rapid social awareness. So here an effort is made to examine the birth and growth of the Indian novel, how the Indian novel it came into existence, how it started, and the beginning of English novel in India, and the result of historical, political, social, and cultural incidents. These incidents which were taking place in India, especially Indian struggle for independence, Gandhian movement, partition. These are some important incidents that played an instrumental role in shaping, you can say, this genre. And these incidents encouraged the birth and growth of English novel. And Dr. Vijender Kumar says in this connection, the first half of the 20th century has been rich and fruitful period for the Indo-Anglian novels, which show the profound influence of the epoch-making political, social, and ideological changes because of the Gandhian movement. Mahatma Gandhi was an iconic figure in the movement. He was a symbol of many things for many people. He was seen variously as a great opponent of European imperialism and as a champion of civil rights for racial, religious, and other minorities. He was an important critic of industrial system of production, and his great quality lay in his ability to reach out to the poor and the oppressed people. A great Indian political leader and social reformer, Ram Manohar Lohia, he says, 10 of millions through the world saw in him their spokesman, the solace and the remedy for their suffering and distress. The independence movement of India that took place before the, you can say, independence, it was not merely a political struggle, but a pervasive emotional experience for all Indians in the 1920s and 30s. So the pre-independence movement was a political struggle for independence, combining and confronting varied forces. The movement strove for uh, starting India as a sovereign, secular, independent nation, purged of political, economic, and social evils which had spoiled the very vitals of national life. In this way, the novel of the period are more national in literature. That means they are dealing with this movement in movement nationalism. That is the important element in the, you can say, many of novels written during the pre-independence era. The Islamic separatists became politically more important in India from the mid 1920s. Muslim made up about a quarter of the entire population of the subcontinent, and they were in a majority in the northwest and east Bengal. Their demand led to the creation of a separate Muslim state in 1940. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, an old political rival of Mahatma Gandhi, became the leader of this movement. He took the issue to states in 1946, which led to terrible riots in Calcutta and other parts of India. The Congress leaders began to view Muslim majority areas as a possible liability for the fledgling nation state, and decided reluctantly to agree to the division of the subcontinent into two nations, India and Pakistan. And that took place during the partition of the India. Indeed, the process of this partition began on 15th of August 1947. As a result of that, what was there? Conflict. There was conflict between Hindus and Muslims involving Sikh began rapidly. Thousands of people died and millions of them became refugees. Many leaders worked vigorously to alleviate the suffering of the people who were the victim of this partition event. They insisted that the Muslim who remained in India should be treated as full and respected citizen of the new nation. Dramatic incident of partition of India. It played an it played a significant role in the growth, in the development of Indian novel. Partition did not merely mean as two new geographical dimensions, but it gave birth to a new psychic dimension. It cannot be overlooked as an incident of the past because it is another phase of independence. The search for identity did not end with the departure of the British. It began with the most conspicuous event of partition. So, creative writers, especially Indian English Muslim novelists, started discussing the theme of partition in their works. According to Sukrita Pal Kumar, as an important critic, who says partition cannot just be historicized as an event of the past. In actuality, that past has been perpetually digging into present. The creative writer in the subcontinent has been working and reworking the event of partition in fiction. If it only to come into grip with the dynamic thrust of human consciousness struck by both the collective as well as individual tragedy. For the relation between the actual social condition and reality of the individual's experience to be understood, the writer has had constantly to evolve a new strategy to confront the actuality of the historical and cultural accident of the partition. Human relationships were re-evaluated, values were re-examined, and a new sensibility emerged. So, the novels of the period dealt with the theme of partition and its consequences. Also, it was the period of various socio-political movement, the progressive movement, independence movement, and the wave related to Marxist ideology played vital roles in popularizing Indian English fiction. Of course, the writers of the period considered novel as a popular channel to convey their thoughts, but Indian novelists of freedom movement wrote novels in English not for the outlandish reading public, but for Indians and for themselves primarily, and produced not with themes and situations that they may appeal to the West, but those that may appeal to the Indians. And we have, in this way, the growth of the novel it took place. So several factors have helped for the creation of Indian English novel. As a result, many writers began writing novels in English. Here, we can study one by one, and we can divide them into first generation novelists, the second generation novelist, and also there were many Sikh novelists who also contributed a great deal to the development of novel. And we have also, in the recent time, we have some Dalit writers who are continuously, you can say, writing regarding the oppression and suppression of the you can say people belonging to lower classes or downtrodden people. And among the first generation novelists, let us discuss this point first. As mentioned, as we have discussed, that Indian English fiction came into existence only in the later part of the 19th century. Indian writers earlier than that of different stages were attached emotionally with their regional languages. Indians believed that English was a British language and hence they should not go with this language. In fact, the Englishmen or anything associated with them would bring them bitter feelings. But there was an argument that learning English would not mean a slave mentality. English language, with its great literary heritage, is no longer a language of a particular country or race. It is considered as a universal language that has several benefits. In other words, it is a wonderful window on the world and has thrown open to us a vast panorama or worldwide scientific, literary, cultural, and political scene by which we have we have immensely, you can say, gained. Another conformity in the pre-independence period to retain and favor English in India, was that it was serving as a link language throughout the country. It was an official and court language used extensively all over the country. English became popular in a very short uh, time period of in a short time period among the Indian population. And people, they started using it for speeches, articles, pamphlets, and discussing several current problems. Pramod Kumar Singh says in this connection that in the mid 19th century, Raja Ram Mohan Rai has initiated social reforms programs, and in the process, he favored the English language for spreading the wealth of information and culture available in British publications. Rajaram Mohan Rai, though a master of Sanskrit, Persian, and Arabic languages, felt that all Renaissance knowledge was compiled mainly in European languages. The early Indian English writing consists of pamphlets, essays, and poems. Rajaram Mohan Rai's book, Percepts of Jesus, that was published in 1820. It shows his generosity of mind, mastery over English, and sincerity in treatment of Indian themes. Then came Dutt family, especially Toru Dutt and Ramesh Chandra Dutt, as English writer contributing more to the literary field. Rabindranath Tagore, Shri Aurobindo, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee got entrance to the creative field later. They are considered the titans in the field of Indian writing in English. Really, their contribution is unique. Equally, great writers like Motilal Nehru, Rana Day, Gopal Krishnan Gokhale, and Sarojini Naidu followed these writers. Indian English writing continued to grow with the genre of novel and short story. The novelist and short story writers such as S.K. Ghosh, Manmohan Ghosh, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, S.M. Mitra, Raj Lakshmi Devi, and Lal Bihari De, A. Mahadevia, and S.B. Banerjee, Sardar Joginder Singh, Balkrishan Nagesh, Vishwanath Pai, Sarobji Cornelia, T. Ramakrishnan, and K.S. Venkatramani were the writers who were experimenting to provide recognition to Indian English fiction. They wrote social, historical, and detective novels. Their historical romances were popular. Novels with political and social themes dominated the field during the period 1860 to 1920. After that period, during the period of 1920 to 1950, the next batch of Indian English writers like R.K. Narayan, Mulak Raj Anand, Raja Rao, Bhavani Bhattacharya, Khushwant Singh, and host of other were trying their art of fiction writing with equal felicity and facility. So they had unlimited and unrestricted themes. The novels of Mulak Anand and Bhavani Bhattacharya deal with the themes of social criticism and political emancipation. They protest against the feudalism and imperialism of the period. The religious and mythical Indian traditions have been successfully presented in the novels of R.K. Narayan and Raja Rao. Whereas in the works of post-independence writers, psychological and social tensions are the crux of, we can say, their books. The novelists like R.K. Narayan, Ahmad Ali, Atiya Hussain, Balkrishan, A. A. Madhavya, Joginder Singh, they have derived their main characters from the urban middle class. They are lively presentations of middle class manners and conflict between tradition and modernity. They exposed the snobbery, sentimentality, and hypocrisy, corruption, and various other abuses which were present in Indian society. Among the beginners of Indian English fiction, Chatterjee, 1838 to 1903. He is known as the pioneer writer who used and encouraged the works of novel in English extensively. He played an important role in its rise and development. As Harish Rayjada observes, for the same time, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee encouraged the creative energy of promising writers who were hesitant and shy of writing novels. He decided the future course of this literary form in India and came to be known truly as the father of English novel. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee wrote Raj Mohan Wife in 1864, and it is the first novel in English. It is said that he wrote the novel in order to attract the attention of the West. As the first Indian novel in English, it promised a rich growth. The novel is remarkable for Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's narrative skill. He uses the devices of ancient, accident, crime, thrill, suspense, and it is a realistic tale of suffering of a typical Hindu wife. The name of the character is Matangini. Matangini's character is nicely portrayed and delineated by the author. Her boundless capacity for tolerance, her human consideration for Madhav, her selfless affection for her sister, and her courage make her a bold Indian woman. However, Matangini's husband Rajmohan is sketched as a villain who commits a series of crimes. Many other writers followed Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's examples, and Raj Lakshmi Devi published her novel The Hindu Wife in 1876. A Kerala Christian missionary, Mrs. Richard Collins' novel The Slayer Slain. It appeared in 1877. Kali Krishna Lahiri, Rashinara, his book, this novel, it came in 1881. H. Datta published his Vijay Chand in 1888, and Khetarpal's Chakrabarti, Sarata and Hingana, it came to be published in 1895. Apart from these writers, Rabindranath Tagore, a Nobel laureate of English, Gitanjali, is credited to have produced several novels primarily in Bengali, but later on some of them brought into English. His novels are The Home and the World, The Wreck and Gora, which came in 1923. These are domestic and social novels dealing with the social problems. So Indian English fiction acquired its place in India gradually. Torudutt, 1856 to 1877, an eminent poet of the period, wrote a novel called Biensa in 1878. And this novel was written by her when she was just a teenage girl. It is said that this novel is more a product of imagination than of experience. Torudutt describes the sorrow of her heroine, Binaka, and her father. Binaka's mother is sketched as a villain, and the novel is artistically rich, but because of Torudutt's premature death, it remained incomplete. We have another novelist during the pre-independence era, Lal Bihari Dey, and he wrote from 1824. His time span is from 1824 to 1894, and he is also among the most reputed Indian English novelists who wrote Bengal Peasant Life in 1888. His novel presents a realistic portrayal of the society dealing with the Bengali peasant family of the Samantas living in Kanchanpur village near Gurdwan. The novel exposes various manifestations of exploitation caused by landlord, corrupt officials, and foreign planters. Compact characters are real, and the novel is written in a simple language. It is considered as one of the best Indian English novels written in the later half of the 19th century. And we have another novelist, Shoshi Chandra Dutt, 1826. He wrote He was also one of the important, you can say, novelist of that era who published some collected works in 6 volumes. He wrote 2 novels, The Young Zamindar, 1883, and Shankur, 1885. The first novel deals with Manohar, a young Zamindar, and presence, gradually admitting that English rule, with all its drawbacks, is better than what the Mohammedans' rule was. Mohammedans, the rule of the Muslims. In his short novel, Shankur, S. Siddharth deals with the social relationship and compromises of